guys, ATCZ here. Welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. And today we have a deck that we have never done in this channel before. We're profiling Counter Fairies. A deck that has got support pretty recently with a structure deck. It got some new cards that it really needed for it to work. And I think it's a kind of interesting deck. It's an anti-meta deck that hasn't ever seen play because other decks like Altergeist Sharp Terrors exist. But it's a really interesting deck to look at, and this is how we've taken on the deck. So let's begin. We have one Arts Parsach. You only need one, because once you have access to him, which is not that difficult to do, you can just keep bringing him back from the grave, and he's the beater of the deck, because the deck really needs some way of dealing damage, because the problem with this deck is that it runs out of counter traps, but you have no way of gaming your opponent, so that's pretty much how you win the game, is with a 28 beater that can keep bringing back itself from the grave. One's Radias. Because Sanctuary in the Sky has some interactions with some card effects, and if you already have Sanctuary in the Sky, it's a 21 beater that you can summon without using any kind of tributes because it's a level 4, so it's another monster that can push out the game very fast. A very optimal play for the first turn is summoning Condemned Witch, because you can search your Forbidden Chalice, and that's also another negate, and during your opponent's turn you can tribute her to special summon any level 4 fairy from your deck, so you can have access to whatever you need, just not to whatever you draw in the first turn. So that's why this card is really good, but not 3 of, because once you use her on the first turn, then you don't have that many uses for her afterwards, because you don't want to wait until your opponent's turn after they have established a board in order to get the monster you want on the field. 3 Minerva, another monster that keeps boosting itself when you use counter traps, so that's why the deck got a little bit of support. It got what it needed, it got monsters that can press damage on the field. It had a way to get out its counter traps or recycle the counter traps, but this is what the deck needed in order to perform well, and it's another monster that can become very powerful. 3 Artemis, the classic counter fairy monster. Each time you use a counter trap, you draw a card, so it replaces all the counter traps you use. So that's why this card is the monster you want to summon during the first turn. You either summon her by herself, or you can summon her with Condemned Witch, and if you have a field full of counter traps, even if your opponent has a way to deal with all of them and he starts running into them, you can just keep drawing more cards, so you can either draw more monsters or more counter traps in order to have plays for the next turn. And 3 Guiding Ariadne. You usually won't have this card in the scale because it makes all your counter traps free, but its monster effect is not half bad. If it's destroyed, you get to reveal 3 counter traps from your deck, your opponent picks 1, you add it to your hand, the other 2 go back into the deck. So if it's in a scale and your opponent wants to deal with it, it will not go without giving you a plus. And if you have to summon it for whatever reason to either defend yourself, if it's destroyed, you will get another counter trap so you can stop your opponent's plays during the next turn. Now for the spells, 3 Extravagance, very important card for the deck. I think it's better instead of playing Card of Demise, because playing Card of Demise means that you have to cut even more monsters from the deck, but if you cut monsters from the deck and you only have a handful of counter traps, then that's not the way to win the game. Yes, you can stall out, but the purpose of the game is not to stall out your opponent's plays, is to make your opponent's life 0, so you need monsters in order to do that, so that's why I think Extravagance is much better than Card of Demise. And 3 Duality. You hardly ever special summon. You only special summon, you can special summon during your opponent's turn, you can summon Parsach, and you can summon during your opponent's turn with Condemned Witch, so it doesn't contradict with your playstyle. And it gives you exactly what you need. Either you need a monster or you need a trap. Duality can get it to you. We run 3 copies of the Continuous Sanctuary. This is an unsearchable card, so that's why you have to play 3, and even if you have Sanctuary in the Sky, if your opponent deals with it. This card protects your back row, which is one of the deck's greatest weaknesses. Twin Twisters and cards like MST hurt this deck a lot. Some effects that pop the entire back row really hurt, so that's why you need. And having it in your spell and trap zone doesn't hurt because you can have 4 more spells and traps, so you don't really need to have 5 back row in order to stop your opponent. Hardly will ever your opponent have enough plays to go through 4 traps anyway, so that's why you need to play 3 of this card. And we'll play 2 of the original Sanctuary, because you can search it with Radias, and it also helps you not take any battle damage from your fairies, so you can make use your life points are safe when you have your weak fairies in the field. And of course it has some interactions with other card effects. This and the other Sanctuary are both 3 Sanctuary in the Sky, so you can use it some effects. 2 Chalice, 2 targets for Condemned Witch. I don't think Lance is any good. Lance doesn't really help you because hardly will ever face any decks that rely on spells and traps that will hurt your plays, because you don't have anything that activates on someone, on something really important that you need to go through. So Chalice is a really good card going first and going second. You can stop effects that stop you from activating your draw cards during the first turn, and when you go second, you can make sure you hit an important play for your opponent. And sometimes the plus 400 makes you deal with some monsters. And the last spell is Monster Reborn, because this deck lacks monsters, so being able to get back whatever you want from the grave actually can help sometimes. For the traps, play a lot of them, of course. This is Counter Fairies, 3 Solemn Judgment. When the Solemn Judgment is free, it's the best thing in the world, so combined with Guiding Ariadne, all the Solemns are really amazing, because you don't have to pay any life points. Your opponent will not be able to stop all of them, especially if you have Sanctuary and they have Twin Twisters, hardly will ever main deck. You will see main deck evenly matched. In the side deck, this is one of the plays that can deal with it, because if people side an evenly match against this deck, Solemn Judgment is the only way to play it. You can side cards like Wiretap or Dark Bribe if you are too afraid of evenly matched, but I don't think it's a card you will see too much, especially in this format, but some will side it, so that's why you still need to play 3 Solemn Judgment, and it's the Solemn that's always live, even if you don't have Ariadne. No matter when you draw it in the game, you can always pay half your life points. 2 strikes. I don't think you need to play 3, because it's a card that doesn't stop Denko Seka, which is another card that can absolutely kill this deck. So I think playing 2 is actually fine. You're not afraid of that many hand traps, because you don't use a lot of cards that could get hand trap. Only Ash can hurt this deck when you play your Extravagance or your Duality. So I think 2 strikes are fine. And I want to play the 1 warning, because, again, mostly for Denko Seka, because the side deck is what kills these back heavy decks. So it's a card that can stop the card that completely shuts down your strategy. If you break off this card, stops your opponents from drawing, can be used in the draw phase. It's pretty much a 1-for-1, but not when you have Ariadne on the field. You get to draw a card every time you activate a counter trap. So if your opponent loses a card, you get a card back. So technically it's a +1 card advantage, and it's always live. And against cards like that Search, that you can draw cards, it's really important. 2 Divine Punishment. I don't want to max out on this because sometimes it could be dead, but that's why I run like 6 copies of Sanctuary in the Sky with 2 of the field spell, 3 of the Continuation, and 1 Zeradias. You have draw power, you have search power with Duality, so you can make sure that it's mostly live, but even the fact that it could be dead in some scenarios makes me not want to run 3. And we're on 2 of the Continuous Trap of the Parsec. When your opponent activates something, you can reveal a counter trap, you can negate that, and then you spell some of the Parsec from the deck. We don't run the Parsec in the extra deck because that would rely 3 slots because of the Extravagance, so that's why I don't think it's necessary. And once you get access to the Parsec from the deck, you can just keep bringing it back from the graveyard, so that's why you want to get access to that one instead of the Synchro. The Synchro doesn't do that much for the deck, but this one gives you constant power on the field. Now for the extra deck, Mana Beast Dweller, it's the only Xyz I run. Again, Extravagance can hurt the extra deck, so I don't think you should rely on the extra deck. But this card is really good against certain matchups. It's the most impactful rank 4, and since the deck is filled with level 4s, I think it's the only one you should run. 1 Lambda, because it's Lambda. It gives you pointing arrows. If you have gotten to very much of a grind game and you have a lot of monsters on the field and you need to link climb in order to win, then that's one of the options you can do. 3 Phoenix. Because the Nightmares are the most generic links in the game, I think you should max out on them because you won't have access to them during the whole source of the game. If you use Extravagance even twice, then you can still have them, because even 12 cards means that you have 9 copies of Nightmares, so you will have at least 1 in your deck, hopefully. With the same logic, 3 Cerberus. Even if it's not the best card in this format, you still need 3 just to make sure you deal with some monsters. And the most important one is Unicorn, because once you have used one of the other Nightmares, you want to link climb into something bigger, something that can deal damage, something that can deal with cards. Ariadne makes sure that you have enough cards in your hand so that you will not run out of cards from your hand, so you can keep bouncing back your opponent's cards. 2 Warlord, because if you have the field full of monsters, sometimes you need to go to this. One good thing about this deck is that it does not get hurt by Colossus that much, unless you have drawn like multiple dualities or something, but still Warlord is a very important card to have. And 2 Boral Sword, because a field full of slow monsters that don't have that much attack means that you can go into Boral Sword and try to OTK, because the deck needs to finish the game as fast as possible because it loses resources once your opponent starts gathering cards in the graveyard or cards that can stop you from doing your plays whenever you want. So yeah, that's the deck, guys. It's kind of a interesting deck, one that reminds of the meta Subterra's Altergeist to Draco, but since it's not something you see too often, I think it's one that you can enjoy more and one that you don't see in tournaments. You will not see any mirror matches because the control mirror matches are the worst thing ever, so that's why you should give this deck a try, and it's really fun. Alright, thanks guys for watching, see you next time.